All right, welcome to Dentman, where we explore the minds driving innovation and growth in the dental world. Today, we are joined by Dr. Nagaraj. I hope I said that correctly, a visionary dental entrepreneur and implant surgeon, helping dentists 10x their lives, or as they say. But welcome to the show. Appreciate your time.
The pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Of course, we have our usual Dr. Milad and our usual Mr. Masood, CEO, co-founder of Allo AI, and myself as well. So let's jump in. Maybe before we do anything else, Doctor, if you want to do a little bit of an intro about yourself, your beginnings, your journey, and then we'll jump into questions. I'll ask the first questions, but Masood and Dr. Milad have so many, so we'll get there.
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys are immigrants, but I'm the immigrant here. Yeah, immigrated to America in 2011. I'm an international dentist, trained in India for 5 years, worked as a faculty for a couple of years there, and then I got into NYU for a 3-year program. Long story short, graduated 2014. My wife, Abhishek, she's a dentist as well, my business partner as well, and she graduated 2011. When I graduated, she and I came together in 2015, towards the end of 2015, where we opened our first dental practice together in Burbank, Illinois. And we were only engaged to each other at the time, slightly risky in hindsight, right? We weren't married still. But things worked out. We bought an underperforming practice that was doing a couple 100,000, scaled that to about a couple million in 2 years. And we both felt like, okay, we're getting good at this. And we got a little tired of seeing each other every day. So we're like, let's go do this again. And we both picked up our second practice. And fast forward to today, we've done one practice one on average a year. And we generally pick up underperforming practices and scale them to like 2 to 2.5 million. Ideally in about 2 to 3 years. And along that journey, when we got to our third practice, we recognized that it wasn't just the two of us. We had to bring in this third variable in the form of an associate dentist. So we had to really figure out along the way how to transfer some of our skills that we had acquired to make us those $2 million providers and transfer them over to associate dentists, which kind of fast forwarded us to the journey we are today. It's what we do. My wife and I both clinically retired last month. So I was only doing implant dentistry the last couple of years. This is my 11th year in practice in America. And I was able to clinically retire and actually just do this full time and grow the vision of the business, bring on amazing dentists who want to grow, who want to become 10x dentists and want to be $1 million clinicians over a 3-year timeline. Take them on and really give them the tools, the mindset, the philosophy to be able to do that. That's in a nutshell.
Yes, awesome.
That's awesome. Well, Doc, I do wanna give you a big shout out because the fact that I can take my wife at home and the fact that you're in the office, that's big deal.
We work really well together, man.
Like I said that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have complementary skills, right? I mean, we have the things that I hate, she naturally gravitated towards, and vice versa. And somehow we got things done early on. But over time, we've taken plenty of personality tests, Colby and Culture Index to really understand, like, there's no such thing as a weakness, right? Between couples too. There's only strengths. And how do we like really zone in on our unique abilities and really like exponentially grow that piece. So it's been a really fun ride.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the fact that you're doing that's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
What's the question I always have, and I ask this question probably from any dentist that came to this podcast that has been successfully opened multiple of practices. Along your journey, when was the time that you felt like, okay, I'm ready to go acquire like my other practice or other practice? Like, where was the turning point for you that you said, okay, I'm ready to like go and acquire another practice? I just wondering, like, when do you know that it's time for you to go out and just get another practice going?
It's a really good question. Back in the day when I wasn't as wise because I hadn't made enough mistakes back then, I think one of the reasons we did it was we were two of us and we were like, yeah, we're doing this too much. We like work in the business, outside the business. So we need to go because we're independently good. Let's go do this. But in hindsight, the answer should probably be when the capacity is starting to max out, right? We probably pulled the trigger a little too quickly back in the day. We hadn't really maxed our first practice, but we jumped and bought a second practice anyway. And I know a lot of dentists are trying to do that, right? Because it isn't I think when you're starting out, it feels like you're looking at all these dentists that have multiple practices and sounds fancy, but it's like, honestly, sometimes it could be more headaches, right? And you're not doing it for the right reasons. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but really the time to do it, to do the next practice is when your practice is really starting to max out. Maybe when it's at 80% its capacity, that is the time I would probably go and move. When I say capacity, I mean like what's the revenue per chair and how many chairs do you really have? And for me, that revenue per chair is like it's got to get to 40,000 per chair per month. And when you start to maximize, and if you have 4 chairs, that should be a $2.2 million practice. When you're at about 1.8 million, you should really start to think about your next business.
That's amazing. I mean, the fact that, when you don't think about it, that's something that, I always talk about is when we go to dental school, you get out. I mean, luckily I did my undergraduate in business. I had some business ideas when I got out of dental school, but like these are the type of things that don't talk enough about. And I have been such a big advocate for our industry so far in the past 2 years of being out that I'm like, it's amazing to see the dentists like yourself being so kind of taking on the task of like wanting to teach others and wanting to empower other dentists, because I think it's so important. And the other thing that I value the most is the fact that you are a dentist and you are a CEO of a company. I think that is so relatable to the dentist, to have a dentist that is owning the company, that is the dentist is a clinician. It makes it so much better as far as the patient management goes. How do you feel about that? As far as, do you believe that it is a good thing for the industry to have a CEOs and the people that sit on top of these bigger DSOs to be dentists? Do you think there is a benefit to that? What is your vision on that? Because I'm very big on this and I just want to know what's your intake on that.
100%. I think there's a direct correlationship between the practices or the businesses, dental businesses that are super successful are usually clinician-led. And I think that plays a pretty big role. So that's a really good question that you ask. I think if dentists can actually take the time to understand the business side of things and really take their time to understand the finance piece of things, I think there's no stopping us. And I actually advocate for that, right? Because there's too many dentists kind of giving up control to saying non-dentists and saying, hey, like you guys should kind of take over. But the problem with that is ultimately, I'm not saying every non-dentist is bad, right? I'm not saying that at all. But I think if non-dentists don't understand what happens when you're a dentist and actually how patient care actually happens and how it's delivered, you only know when you actually have delivered care in a patient's mouth, right? That's the only time you can really understand like the stress that comes with that. There's this this meme I was reading. A dentist is the only person that takes 15 to 20 meetings a day and has a deliverable and a measurable on every single patient that you have to deliver on, right? Usually people take 3 to 5 meetings and they're like, oh my God, but we actually do way more than that. So just understanding and empathizing with that piece, it goes a long way. But I think to your question, I think more dentists should take the time to educate themselves.
Absolutely. I think it's such a crucial piece to the success in our industry. And I believe that I'm so big on that because I was too many times I ran into an issue where I worked for an organization where their COO walks in and try to figure out, tell you about the patient management side of things, and without having a clue on what it takes to really manage that patient. And I think that's been one of the biggest things that I talk about, because I think at the end of the day, it's all about not compromising that patient care because somebody doesn't have an idea or clue of really what's going on with that end of it. So in that perspective, I think it's such an important thing. Now, the next thing I also ask these questions a lot too. It's like, I know you and your wife, you guys have a completely different method as far as your hiring system goes and all that. And we get into that, but I want to know as far as the culture that you bring in these doctors, right? I was a recent graduate, came out. Now you're going into an organization, you have to somewhat be flexible and adapt to whatever that culture of that company is and the organization is. So how do you ensure that culture is protected when you're bringing on a dentist or an associate or you hire somebody? How do you guys make sure that culture that you set in place and that the standard is protected?
That's a really solid question. I think culture, people often think about culture as a top-down thing, right? I believe culture is at the practice level. It should be at the unit level. So every dentist that comes on board with us goes through a rigorous onboarding process for 3 weeks. They don't touch patients for 3 weeks. That means for the first week, we're purely talking to them about mindset and philosophy, and that's it, right? We aren't even talking about dentistry. I think that's important for culture, right? That's our culture in our company, right? Like people, we care about, you'll hear the theme 10X. That 10X is about if you just continue to brute force your way through life, that's 2X, right? Dan Sullivan, I'm a big fan of Dan Sullivan. 10X is easier than 2X. If you want exponential growth, you have to do exponential things, and you can't be linear in your thinking. And I think so many dentists that graduate, rightfully so, dental school taught them to be just linear. Don't think outside the box. Just go do your thing. Go work for a DSO. Ask for like a sign-on bonus. Everybody just does the same thing, right? But exponential thinking has to be inculcated in people. So that's what we do in our company. So first week is only mindset. Week 2 and week 3, they go into the practice that they're in, and they go and shadow and work with the other dentists just for 2 weeks. They're just being their assistant. They work as their assistant, and that really helps them understand the culture, because the other dentist, generally we have multiple dentists in one location. That means that it shows them how other dentists behave. How do they walk in? How do they interact with patients? When do they do handoffs? When does the treatment coordinator come in? There's a process, there's a method to the madness, so to speak. And when they start to see their own patients that way, they're not just doing things out of turn, or they're not just doing their own things to be creative, right? We don't want, it's okay, it's good to be creative, right? But we want a standardized approach towards care, which is like what your question was. So that's one of the ways we've accomplished that.
That's really great, Dr. Raj. And I very much love how open you are to these things. And that, I don't know if I should say this or not, Dr. Milad, but many of the, exclusive of you guys, many of the dentists I see, they have a very high ego. And we were actually discussing that like the other day, why they have an ego. It was very hard for them to get what they are. And that makes sense. And they need to have an ego sometimes, because if they don't, their teams are just going to walk over them. You know what I mean? So, but some of them just fall off from the other side of the wall, they just have too much of it. There's no balance. And I really appreciate that you are very open and, discussing these things without any signs of that, I would say, like openly, literally.
You're not wrong, Masood, right? Like the exact thing you said, we have to deal with that too, right? I have to deal with dentists who have ego and they're just like barely out of school, right? Because again, this comes
from Dr. Milad.
Some old professor, and it's not every new dentist, right? Like it's good, like when dentists have humility, like especially like as time goes on, it's like the thing that keeps you grounded, right? You've got to keep practicing that. And it's for anybody new in a profession too, or in any profession, but it's not their fault. It's our system has a flaw in it, right? Dental schools have no problem, and I'll say this out loud, dental schools have no problem taking $500,000 from dental students, but how dare those dental students go out and make $250,000, right? How dare they, right? So they're brainwashing dental students to say, you can't do that, or you can't do this. But you have to ask for all of these things. So it creates this sense of entitlement even before they come out. So it's not really the dental students' fault. It's the schools that are kind of training them. And I'm not saying every school, but the majority of schools are doing that. So there's a flaw in the system.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because, it's not really people are people. People are who they are. It's the system and the surroundings that really shape what they are and who they become. And another thing that you mentioned, Dr. Raj, that I very much liked, and thank you so much for that. It literally opened many things to me. You were like, I wasn't wise enough because I didn't make enough mistakes. So what were the top 3 mistakes that you made? And, there are 2 ways to learning things. Either someone else tells you, which you don't learn as well, and when you experience it and it becomes a failure or a success for you. When it's a failure, it's the best type of learning something, because you see all the ins and outs of it, and you in real world, you experience it. What are the top 3 mistakes that you made and you wish for every other dentist, including Dr. Milad, to make?
Man, that's a really good question. There's a saying, the difference between knowledge and wisdom is application. Right? When I started out, I was acquiring knowledge at a really fast pace, but I hadn't put in the time to get wiser. I hadn't applied it yet, right? The only way you can get wiser is by applying it. And frankly, application just takes time. So if I went back 10 years, I would tell myself to be patient, right? So I think one of the early mistakes was I was very impatient for success, because I was looking at all these other people doing all these cool things, but grass is always greener on the other side, man. Right? because it's fertilized by a bunch of bullshit, right? That's why it's greener.
That's
And
literally what I'm telling Dr. Milad every day. Doctor, be patient. It's okay. We'll get there.
absolutely, right? So in hindsight, like, be patient. So I was super ambitious, as was my wife. But if you ask her or ask me, I think it's good to be ambition, but I will add a word before that ambition. Patient ambition is better than ambition, right? Because it takes time. Third one, probably not jump into buying a second practice too quickly just because I want to be called a multi-practice owner. I wanted that really badly. I envisioned that straight even before I graduated dental school. Its revenue is vanity. It doesn't matter. Profit, sanity, cash is king and queen. I believe in that. So if you make like $3 million, if you produce $3 million out of one practice, that's better than having three $1 million practices, because you don't have to spread yourself thin, right? So I, in hindsight, I would have taken the time to really ramp that practice to like 3 million, as opposed to go and buy another practice, which only did like $1 million or $1.5 million. But now we had two things to divide and conquer, a lot more headaches to deal with. So that would probably be my third one.
You know, Doc, Masood is always blaming me for wanting things. I'm like, man, we have that immigrant mentality. We want that American dream. I want it now.
And we want it today.
I want
Yeah,
it. Want to wait. But no, he's absolutely right. I think for me, it becomes, like you said, that being patient, it's very important. And I think I always, and I learned that time I rushing through things and kind of trying to figure things out, you end up even being worse, because I just tried to take a shortcut in certain ways and I made certain mistakes, and those mistakes kind of cost you time, cost you so much more headache, and then you don't realize it at the moment. But that's, that I'm still, I guess, learning it, but it's just one of those things like master. I just wanted.
and that's how you do it, right, Dr. Milad? Steve Jobs said, really like stays true to me even to this day. He said you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So that it all makes sense. Everything I ever wanted 10 years ago has come true, and I've actually gotten more than what I asked for. But only today I can sit back and connect the dots looking backward and say, damn, all those things that happened this way, this way, this way. But you can't connect it looking forward. It's really hard to do that, right? Because none of us have a crystal ball.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. And I think that's just one of those things that we learn more and more when we have these conversations, and we learn that, hey, just like you said, ambitious is good, but being patient along the way. And, Masood is right. He tells me every day, I'm like, Masood, let's get this platform going. What are you doing? You're so slow. And I'm just like, he's like, be patient. Take it step by step. You got to go through the process. And I'm like, and now that you said it, man, you should see his head just got bigger.
No, I do agree with him, right? Because, well, sometimes it's okay to take your time to put out a really good product as opposed to rushing to be first in the market to put out an average product. I completely agree with that philosophy.
And one more question I had. Sorry, Hossein, before you go, it was just about.
Yeah, you ask, and mine is about future, but go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. Do you think it'd be wise? Usually with my questions, I try to save Dr. Milad from going into wrong directions. Do you think it'd be wise to buy out 3 practices early on when you want to start out a DSO, or just start with 1?
I think you got muted.
Yeah.
Did you say buy practices as opposed to 1?
Yes, when you're early on just starting out a DSO, and that's your game plan for the next 5 to 10 years. You want to have a successful DSO that's acquiring like 3 to 4 practices a year. Do you think it's wise to start with just 1, or right off the bat, you buy out 3 and try to manage them all?
Dr. Raj, he just wanted to say that I want to buy 3 practices at 1. That's because we just talked about that 2 days ago. Just be honest, Masood.
I mean, hey, look, these are thoughts that have come into my head too. So that this is a really good question. And here's how I look at this, right? I would put this in 2 buckets. If you've got the experience scaling practices, yeah, you can probably go buy 3 practices, but you've got to build out the infrastructure first, right? If you don't have the infrastructure, I think buying 3 practices is risky at once, because there's so many things that can go wrong in multiple different directions and multiple stages that you probably don't want to risk everything you have on 3 practices just so you can say you have 3. To me, I will always stick to this. Buying 1 practice, if you don't master the unit level economics, I have a business coach, he taught me this. If you don't master the unit level economics, that means if you can't get it right at 1, you have no business buying something new, right? You've got to get it right at the first one. And then each one after that, and then you can start to scale that, right? That's how you scale, right? That's how companies like Aspen and Heartland, they got it right at the first one practice and the two and the three and the four, and then they were able to scale. That really resonates with me.
Absolutely. And I think I think me and Master talked about this as well. The future of dentistry, I think, is really bright as far as we know that the industry is growing, things are growing. There's really no rush to try to get to the other side of it. And like you said, we can agree on the fact that the ambitious is good, but like you said, being patient and understanding that process. From my side of view is that, oh man, I can do this. I can probably get 3 or 4 practices off the ground and let them run, just because that's my mentality. I like to juggle a million things at once, but at the same time, I understand that just having the experience that I had so far, I don't think it's enough to be able to even scale that. That I realize and understand that. And like I said, talking to you and understanding how much work it requires to be able to run a successful practice, I think you're absolutely right. I think
you need your. I think you need your systems down in one practice. You need your standard operating procedures really ironed out at a high level, and you need great people to take that to 2 or 3 and 4. Frankly, it took us time to be able to do that. Like, we were building all the SOPs in the first 5 to 6 years. I'm not a systems person, but my wife is. But I understood one thing is people and how to invest in people. And those are two completely different things, right? They're like opposite sides of the same coin. One side is investing in people, the other side systems. And you can't neglect one over the other.
That's amazing. Go ahead.
So question is about technology, or not technology, future. What trends, based on your personal experience, what trends or technologies within the dentistry world are you personally and or professionally really excited about? What do you see, and where do you see it going? I don't want to talk about 10 years, but let's talk about 5 years. What are your perspectives?
I think the obvious answer is AI right now. I know you guys are AI folks. AI is driving a lot of energy, and I'm being careful about how much to adopt, how quickly, right? But the fact is, with like ChatGPT operator, you can pretty much do like 99% of things out there, right? Like, and automate those things. So I'm trying to see how we can take that down to even our practice levels, and how do we make the lives of even our patient care ambassadors and dental assistants and practice leaders really awesome, and automate a lot of that stuff. So that's driving a lot of energy right now. I'm also super excited about robotics in general, right? Maybe because this is like I've tried the implant robot, and I don't think it's there yet, but in 3 to 5 years, I think it's going to be there. And the room for error is just going to go down, which means you can do this, to your question earlier. You can buy 3 or 5 practices, put 5 or 6 dentists, and actually scale them really quickly, because robots are going to do the heavy lifting, and you need dentists to be good, but they don't need to be exceptional, because the robot's going to guide. It's going to be guided surgery by robots. So I think it's getting there.
That's amazing. Doctor, the one thing that I want to ask you is, as you know, like you said, you mentioned something that you are a CEO or a clinician. You work, obviously, how you bring in doctors and, recent graduate or practicing doctors. And some of them come in with that maybe mentality of, like you said, the dental school falls short of teaching them how to not have that ego, or how to be humble about how they maneuver the industries. As a CEO, when you have a dentist that comes in, or a recent graduate that comes in and has that ego, right? Like, comes in, has the ego. And in that case, what is your approach to that? And also, are you taking their feedback? Because you're giving them feedback as a CEO, and are you open to the feedback that they're giving you? And how are you maneuvering that to make sure that you find that balance, right? So how do you find that balance? How do you manage that ego? Like, there's, we always talk about this: hire slow, fire fast. Or do you just say, man, this is too much ego, just get out of here?
At times we have had to do that. You're right. I've had a couple of dentists we've let go in the last 6 months, right? I want to say the dentists that are with us are pretty low on the ego, totem pole on the spectrum. Again, it goes back to recruiting and pre-recruiting and pre-screening. We don't hire dentists with egos. And that's part of that, is just asking them the right questions when you interview them, and actually putting them through like 3 different interview processes. So we do that, right? Like it's usually our VP of Ops who screens them first, and then they get on a Zoom call. And then it's like a 20-minute, like more questions, discovering each other, and then a practice visit. And then we're going over a lot of the pieces of the contract at that time in that visit, which really helps them to understand what they're getting into, right? Once we do that, I find that once the expectations are set in those 1, 2, 3, every interview should build on the previous one, right? So expectations should be set from the first interview. And by the third interview, you just know that this is the right candidate or not. I think I wish I could say I was always like good at recruiting and hiring, made a lot of mistakes, to be honest with you, and kind of blew back in our face. But I think in the last 2 to 3 years, we've really like, zeroed in on like hiring the right people. And when you hire the right people, you don't have to have too many ego conversations. You're right. There's something called Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Dunning-Kruger effect states that when beginners start something, they gain a lot of experience very quickly. So they become more and more, their ego basically inflates because they don't know what they don't know. Whereas experts start to doubt their own capabilities because they don't know what they don't know. And the novices, they know that they don't know, right? So some version of that, maybe I like mixed it up, but you know what I'm saying? So it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. So sometimes they really quickly scale and then suddenly it's like, oh, look at everything I know. So that's when we have to have some tough conversations with dentists too. Ideally, I like to go in with my wife and I, we divide and conquer. We do quarterly reviews with our dentists. So every quarter we're reviewing core values with them. We're having them grade themselves on core values and we're grading them. And if humility is a problem, humility is actually a core value for us. If humility is a problem, we grade it as 1, 2, and 3, 1 being never, 2 being sometimes, and 3 being always. If they give themselves a 3 and we're not seeing it that way, we give them a 1 or a 2 and say, this quarter, I need you to work on that. There has to be constant touch points.
Doctor, I really want to ask a question about just that. As you keep growing and as you keep achieving, because the nature of ego is really when you achieve things that not everyone can achieve. Like when you become a doctor, a dentist, not everyone can become a dentist, right? Like it's hard. As you keep getting these achievements, how do you stay down to earth? I could say like you're probably the most down to earth dentist that I've talked to on this podcast, to be frank. Like with all due respect to all the other dentists we've talked to, including Milad, I really think you are very down to earth. So how do you keep that? Because
you're gonna make no dentists want to come on our podcast.
Now you guys are so fun. Everybody wants to come on your show. It's a really good question. Honestly, look, we have to keep reminding ourselves we're all specs at the end of the day, right? If you take a whiteboard, I have a whiteboard. I do this all the time. I just start putting dots on it. That's like me. That's you. That's Dr. Milad. That's Hussein, right? We're all specs, man. We're all going to die. We're going to decompose one day. And nobody cares, right? People talk about their legacy. Like, no one cares. In 30 years, even our grandchildren won't remember us, right? That's the truth. So we have to just keep reminding ourselves of that. And you have to practice a lot of gratitude, the concept of gap and the gain. Again, Dan Sullivan fan. Most people, I believe, are in the gap, right? They're always measuring against an ideal looking forward. But the problem is those ideals move. Goalposts always move forward. You're never going to measure up. Or you can measure yourself against backward and how far you've come. And that's a better way that helps me put me in the gain. And I like to generally journal, do gratitude journaling every day and note down at least 3 wins that I had. So that way, listen, I'm always winning, right? I'm never losing because every day, and these really compound. If you do 3 wins a day, Masood, in 365 days, you'll have over 1,000 wins. Try putting that in a piece of paper and putting it in a glass jar. At the end of the year, open those glass jars and tell me that you're going to feel like a loser. There is no way, right? So just practicing and being in the game, that doesn't mean I don't go into the gap. As human beings, we all do, but it's the amount of time I spend in the gap is very minimal compared to how much I think about the gain and how much I have in life. So that's something that has to be actively practiced.
That's an amazing perspective, Doc.
Really?
It's so funny you mentioned that. I was talking to another doctor. He's a periodontist, and it's so funny. He's from India too, and he's out in Canada. I remember we were talking about the Dentman platform and bringing him on as a mentor. He said the same thing. He's like, man, we all come from the ground. We're gonna end up in the ground. So, let's just lift each other up, help each other out. And it doesn't matter. It's so amazing and so fascinating to me that as humans, as the people that you see have the heart and the passion to like want to help others, their mentality is always the same. Like, hey, at the end of the journey, we're all going to end up in a place that we all know. So if along the path that we can help somebody and we can lift somebody up and make a difference and empower somebody, that's really what this is about. It's not about, and that's something, and I tell Master this early on in my career, like last year when I got out of dental school, I struggled with that because I was like, man, like I did all this, yeah, I worked hard, I did all these things, I graduated dental school, but I always remind myself that like, my dad always said, treat people how you want to be treated. So I always try, but like you said, I fall into that gap sometimes where I'm like, man, like, no, I know better than somebody else. And I fall into that gap. And like you said, we just have to remind ourselves that, hey, like we came from nothing. I came from nothing. I was a refugee in Turkey for 5 years before I came to US. I live in a refugee camp. My parents had nothing when I came to US. So I always constantly remind myself of that. And that's such a great reminder for people to just know that, hey, just remind yourself where you came from so that way you never fall into that gap. So that's
Yeah, listen, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that about you, but and that just made my respect for you go up that much more.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my journey has been crazy. I left Iran when I was like 9. I lived in refugee camp in Turkey for like 6 years. And I told this to one of the other doctors is the funny part of it is I missed my entire high school year because I couldn't go to the high school. So I left Iran like in 6th grade, and then I missed my entire high school year. So when I came to school, when I came to US, I didn't even know what a periodic table was till I went to undergrad, took a chemistry class.
And look at where you are, right? Like that's the thing. So many people would kill to be where we are today, right? Like 90% of the world would kill to be where we are today, right? So just a constant reminder of that is like the fact that we are sitting here automatically puts us in the top 5% of the world, right? It's within that 5% that we have all of these comparison games and like, how can I do better than that? Everybody wants to be somebody else, but can we just be us, right? Like, and it's better that way. So that way you're not creating this unnecessary stress. Easier said than done. I know I'm guilty of it myself, but I try really hard to stay grounded.
I feel like this podcast are turning into therapy for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say we were also connecting because it's funny. Matt, I found out Dr. Milad and I were actually the same city, not just the same country, but the same city. And I didn't know this about you, Dr. Milad, but yeah, you stayed in Turkey for six years. I was only there for like 4 months, but we had the same narrative. Like it wasn't my choice. My parents made a lot of good decisions, but interesting that it is turning into a therapy, counseling, discovering ourselves. I love that. That's awesome.
It's fun chatting with you guys. You guys are asking some really good questions, by the way.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. Another thing I really want to know.
Yeah, go for it, Masood. I'll go after.
So
go for it. Yeah.
On this other call with Dr. Vijahat, Milad was saying that he came to the US, like he only had $20 in his account when he came. Dr. Vijahat said that he had only $60. So I really wanted to know how much did you come here with?
I'd like to say some like low number like that. Look, I had a good childhood, to be honest. My parents like sacrificed a lot for me to go to America. So I can't say I came with like $60 or $80, but I probably came with about maybe a couple $1,000s to the US. So it's much higher than some of those folks, like hats off to them. And my dad supported me. Even he took another job after he retired. He worked for the government in the city that I come from. Like, honestly, in American dollars, it's like really peanuts what he made. Right? He made like less than like $900 a month, right? But he was still, I remember I still had a credit card that I would use in New York City, and my dad would kind of pay the bill there before I graduated here. Of course, I've tried to repay them back and, done some good things over time. Yeah, I can't say I came with $60 or $80 though.
Well, that's really super great, Doctor, that you are mentioning it, because it was just 3 days back. I was talking to Milad and I was like, everyone that gets somewhere, like after they reach a certain point, and not to mention some dentists that even we talk to and, we are actively talking to, and they are extremely successful dentists and, DSO owners. The only thing is that everyone wants to mention that they came from absolutely nothing and they had literally nothing at first and they built it all by themselves. while so many of them, like they were really privileged. Like if you think of them, like especially so many of the DSO owners, like their fathers were dentists, and one clinic came to them and they had all the practice. This is all to say I really appreciated that you are mentioning that this was your beginning, this is where you are now, and you are super realistic and super honest about it. So that's further
You
confirms
yeah.
how down to earth you are.
No, you speak the truth, my friend. I like you because you're saying some things that most people would be hesitant to say, right? Like that's cool. But you're right. I mean, you have to acknowledge what you came from, and if your childhood was good, we have got to say that, right? Because it would be doing our parents a disservice if we made up stuff about how we came from nothing, right? That's not right. But yeah, to each his own. I guess how they tell their stories up to them.
How do you? One last question. I was gonna kind of go in that realm. How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance while running this growing business? What do you personally do?
Well, good question. My wife and I take we categorized our days into free days, buffer days, and focus days. Focus days are basically money making days, right? So if I'm coaching my dentist on a Zoom call, that's money making day for me, right? So I like to have at least 4 focus days a week. I like to have 1 buffer day a week. A buffer day is basically where you plan for your focus days, right? So you basically meetings, anything that drives value, but it's preparation stuff. It's not actually driving real revenue or you're not making money, but it's in preparation to make money. Free days are just pure free days. You don't even read a business book on those free days, right? Again, this is Dan Sullivan, right? I'm a big fan. We've done that. We took 100 free days last year. That means every Saturday and Sunday we took free days. Essentially, we don't talk about work. At least we try not to. We try to do hikes. We try to do like epic things together. So that way we can really go rejuvenate and get focused on our focus days and go all in on those focus days. I used to be the guy working all the time, 10 p.m. at night. I used to ask my wife, hey, what do we do about this thing at 10 p.m.? And she'd be like, come on, it's 10 p.m. Like, we're not going to talk about this now, right? So we learned over time to create some healthy balance, which actually in hindsight works better and you're more productive that way, at least in my opinion.
That's awesome, Doug. Well, at least, we brought you on our podcast. So if you are the next Aspen and you have like 1,000+ offices, please don't forget us. Look down. We're right down here.
We're all in this together, right?
I appreciate
We do something epic. I hope that we're all going to, be a part of the same way.
Yes,
I know
for
you guys
sure.
are doing some epic things too.
Thank you so much. Like, yeah, we're always talk about, when we started talking about, I started talking with Masood about, and I posted about it today. I found it so fascinating when you open yourself to other people and you open yourself to conversation just like this. Me and Masood, we start talking September of last year. We start talking about, me joining Allo AI and me like, we wanted to like build this platform, the community for dentists. We want to build a mentorship platform. We want to do all these things. And the idea of DentMed came together and just, we put a team up like with Sarah, Craig, like all these people we put together is because we open ourselves to have those conversations. And I think that us being able to work with each other, we're able to make such a big movement. And I said that today, I'm like, individually, we can't really do anything, but as a group and as a team, we can make such a wave. And like you said, like a lot of time we don't think about it, but together we can make a lot of changes along the way and we can touch a lot of people. And I think I enjoy this podcast because I think that's what we're doing with it. At least I'm like, if we can help one person, to me, that we accomplish something. And that's more meaningful to me than anything else. And I think I appreciate every guest that comes on because that's really meaningful for me, at least.
And for what it's worth too, Dr. Milad, even before I got to know you today, I learned so much about you, all 3 of you. I was impressed by how you were collaborating with people. And I think collaboration is a special ability. It's a unique ability. I think that's your unique ability, really, right? Like how you collaborate with people. You've already done so many things and you've only been out like a year and a half. So I think like you have a really amazing future. Like, you just do. And to stay at it. Patient ambition is a good thing, though.
For sure, man.
100%.
With that one, Masood, I for sure don't fit through the door tonight. My head got way too big.
Well, I gotta give you a spoiler, Dr. Raj, that Milad is a great human being to collaborate with, but it's not easy. It's not easy to collaborate with.
Listen, most entrepreneurs aren't, right? Like they're type A's, right? So I'm sure you're like, you guys are probably type A's too. When two type A's come together, it's not easy, right? But good things come out of it. So
No,
you do
no,
it for the,
like literally all the transformation and the revolution he's talking about that's happened in the last few months, he literally made it all happen by himself. Like I'm not really joking or trying to be humble or anything. He's been there. Like when he started a few months back, he only probably had 400 connections on LinkedIn. Right now he's at like 2,500, I think, and it's growing by the day. It's becoming very well known. Even though he's only 2 years out of school, you can see the passion. Like how many other dental students that just graduated do you see on LinkedIn and, around?
that's to me, that's even more impressive because of that. He's only been out a couple of years. So it's really cool. I'm excited for you, man.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raj. Now, for sure, I won't fit through the door. Because I just boosted up my ego. Tomorrow morning, everyone's got trouble in the office.
You're going to go gratitude journal after this. So
Exactly.
I think you got feeling.
Yeah.
I can't be prepared. I'm always prepared. But
That's
no,
awesome.
it's like I always tell masters, I'm like, it's I always tell people, I think the one thing that I notice about the dentistry in general, I feel that what's missing, or at least the one thing I had a meeting during lunch. I said the reason why there's bigger DSOs exist is because somewhere along the way, the dentist has failed the industry as a whole. And the DSOs have realized and recognized that. And they came in and tried to fill that gap because one, they realized that there's a lack of business knowledge. And two, they realized that the dentists don't work greatly together. They mostly want to do this. So, and
You nailed it.
yes,
You absolutely nailed it.
yes,
Dentists are too busy fighting each other as
exactly.
opposed to coming together.
Exactly. And like the idea for me, like that's why when I the idea of DentMed came together, hey, let's build this community that the dentists can come together. We can empower each other. We can give each other knowledge. At that point, when you're able to do that, I think the movement that we're able to create together, it's going to be such a big impact long term on our industry. And I think that's what I really think that if we as dentists realize that we're not each other's competition, rather we are colleagues and we're able to work together and we're able to create things together, I think the power in that is much stronger long term than us just saying, man, this doctor work sucks, or this doctor's work is better, or this doctor is this. But if imagine me and Dr. Raj come together and build another Aspen Dental, what is that going to look like, right? So are you, Doc, are you looking for partner by any chance?
Hey, listen, always open to collaborations.
Yeah,
I just
That's
wanted
awesome.
to get to slide myself in there. I'm like, Doc, are you looking?
just to compliment what Milad is saying. I told you that I wasn't in the dental world. At first, when I came to the dental world, like it was about 2 years back, that a friend of mine, I've said this story many times, probably you've heard it. A friend of mine got a toothache. I was trying to book him an appointment, called up 10 clinics, nobody picked up. That's how I kind of saw a problem and started building a solution for it. The more I got into it, at first I was in love with the solution and the problem that I had found that I had built. But later on, I really fell in love with the industry and the people that I meet. Because I've been in other industries and other ones really like people in them, they don't want change. They're usually closed to these kind of conversations. And if things are good, they just want to keep it the way they are. Like they don't want to improve it. Like they're like, if this is good, let's just keep going. But within the dental field, like every person that we met was so much open to change and so much open to challenges and finding out new things. Like Dr. Vijay had that Milad said, at first when we saw him, our application was pretty shit. Like it wasn't working. It was messing up the calls. So many of the patient calls were getting messed up. But he really put his trust in us with one of his clinics. And, we kept building, even though he was putting down his reputation for one of his clinics, literally. And so far, it was so great. And we are so thankful to him and so grateful for the opportunity that he gave us. And, you can't really find that in, I don't know, barely you find that in people. You know what I mean? Like barely people come to you and give you that kind of opportunity.
Dental industry, I think, is very open. There's some really good people, both dentists and non-dentists, right? Like we have a lot of non-dentist friends, but they actually mean really well for the industry too. Like, there's this, I believe that not every dentist is trying to better the industry and not every non-dentist is trying to destroy the industry either.
Yeah.
The truth lies somewhere in the middle. And the more you seek out, you're absolutely right, Masood. I think the more you seek out, there's so much that people are willing to give openly without any expectation.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
No, with Dr. Vijahad and also like so many other doctors, everyone that we talked to on this podcast, like Mila, like it's not about the podcast alone. It's just that I really love it that I get to know these kind of people because every person is better than the other. And as I mentioned, like with Dr. Vijahad, we kept building and building. He put that trust, but we're really making something good happen. Like just last month alone, like the thing that was pretty shit at first and it wasn't working at all. With one of his other clinics, it booked like around 148 appointments in just 1 month.
Amazing.
So,
wow.
But that's only because he gave us that chance. Like if he did not allow us, if as soon as the first day this thing wasn't working, it would have been like, sorry guys. And not to mention that we also had the experience with Hossein's industry. He mentioned that he was in the MSP industry and we kind of got a client there. But as soon as it wasn't working, it was like, sorry guys, I have to go. Like I can't work with you guys. But we didn't say the same thing here. And that's the same thing with Dr. Milad, with every other dentist that we saw. So I'm really thankful that, my friend got a toothache 2 years back and I got to know this industry and become here. And it's really great. It's really great to meet.
You can only connect the dots looking backward, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Dr. Raj, the one thing I want to tell you is I truly, the one thing that you're gifted in is like your messaging. When I watch your videos on LinkedIn, I truly enjoy the stuff you put on LinkedIn because your messaging is so clear. And I love the fact when you stand in front of the board and you were like drawing things, consistency, this, and you're like, fire this person. I was like, man, I've never seen that. Like, that was so amazing I watched that video probably on repeat thousands times. Consistency, value, fire this person. I'm like, that's amazing how every person that you watch and they all have like individually something, it opens your eyes to the things you didn't know. So I truly think that, you're gifted for the messaging that you're trying to lay over and everything in between. I think that it's so eye-opening to see how much value you can extract just from a video that you watch for 2 minutes. It's so powerful. To me, I was like, wow, this is so impressive.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Very kind. And no, thank you. Let's continue to stay connected.
For sure.
And stay in touch. Just let us know if we can do anything. Likewise, I'd probably, maybe in the next quarter, I'd want to take you, Masood, up for a demo of Allo too. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I would love to. Like wherever it provides value, I would love to, because something I always say, I found a problem, not only solve it for myself, but for other people. Wherever it can provide value. But at the end of the day, like it's really great that we found Dr. Milad because in the dental industry, at first I thought it has a mafia, that they don't want any intruders in it. Like that's what I used to tell Hossein all the time. I was like, maybe these guys, like they don't really want anyone that's not a dentist inside. Dentists only want to work with dentists. Like you've probably heard that, but it's really not like that. Like later on,
I think it's getting better. Honestly, maybe 10 years ago, it was kind of like that. I think it's getting better now, right? Because dentists have recognized DSOs are here to stay. So I think the ADA has recognized that. And now I think everybody's kind of coming together because everybody understands if we don't, one of the parties is going to get left behind. So let's just collaborate and actually make things happen. So
before I let you go, I do want to ask this. How do you feel about the ADA? Do you think that the ADA is doing enough for the industry, or do you think that they are behind for the industry? Because this thing for me is like there are organizations that advocate for the dentist, right? I talked to Dr. Mohammed, he felt certain ways about the insurances. Dr. Vajad said the similar thing. So do you think that the ADA is doing enough for the industry?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Honestly, I mean, they could always do more. That's the reality, right? But I think they're trying right now, but maybe a little bit too late, but they're trying to kind of bridge the gap between the solo dentist and the DSO. And I see them working hard at it. But there's still a lot more that needs to be done in terms of regulations, right? Like, and I'll give you an example. Insurance companies come together all the time and collude on like rules and regulations, but two dentists can't do that. I think that's messed up, right? You can't come collude with a group of dentists and go against an insurance company. By law, like we can get in trouble. I think that's screwed up. And I think the ADA has a lot more to do and like lobby the Congress in terms of in some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, we heard a similar thing with Dr. Benja. They said they wish that they would do more stuff with the insurance and stuff and things like that. Well, Dr. Raj, it's getting late during the night. I do want to say I always close us out, and then Hossein will do the intro as well, but the outro. But the one thing is, I truly want to say thank you so much. This every time I get anyone to come on this podcast to just give us the opportunity to be able to chat with them. The one thing that is valued so much is your time. The fact that you gave us that, it means a lot to me as a person. I want to say thank you so much. These are the moments that it becomes humbling for me. The fact that, you're a CEO, you're a husband, you're a business owner, multiple practices. You took the time, came here and spent, an hour of your time with a few knuckleheads like us and taught us a few things. From me, I just truly want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
And
Before
thank you for having me. Yes, I really appreciate it. You three are so fun. You're just fun people to talk to. And it was so conversational. You guys did an amazing job just keeping it like light and conversational. So thank you for having me. The pleasure is mine. And again, let us know. Let's stay connected.
Absolutely. Quick thing I was just going to say, it's been a real honor to be here with you. I learned a lot. And, I'm still early on in my career and everything. And I still have a lot of mistakes to make before I say I'm wise like you did.
The truth is, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, there's always more to go, but it's still, I still have a long way to go. I'm still very early on. So just if you could give me one advice in just 3 words, like real quick. I know we've taken a lot of your time.
Wow. Honestly, stay in the game. I think that's the big one. Stay in the game, right? Practice gain, practice gratitude. We have so much good going on, and measure yourself backwards to where you've come. You'll see that it's easier to stay in the game. That would be my 2 cents.
That's good. That's really good advice. Love that. Thank you. Appreciate your time, Dr. Nagaraj. Appreciate your time for sharing your personal journey, your professional journey, overcoming how you overcame those challenges, insight on future of dentistry, importance of gratitude. And again, thanks everyone for joining us. Appreciate it. And see you guys on the next episode of DentMed. Thanks everyone.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Talk to you guys soon.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Definitely.